If you want to hide your mouse cursor whenever you're using your keyboard or gamepad and want to make it visible again whenever switching back to your mouse, then I'm going to show you 2 possible ways you can do this in Unity. For both methods, we're going to need Unity's input system that we can get from the package manager. Then we create a cursor visibility manager script and add that we want to use Unity's input system. Now let's first head to our start function. To make our mouse cursor visible or invisible, we can simply write cursor.visible and set the variable to either true or false. Let's first set it to true when starting our script. This part here is not relevant to the visibility, but I also lock our cursor to our game view to help it not wander off screen. Now for our first method, we need a private mouse, keyboard and gamepad variable and set them to the current mouse, keyboard and gamepad in our update function. Okay, now to have a visible mouse cursor when moving our mouse and a hidden cursor when using either a keyboard or a gamepad, we need to first check if we are moving our mouse. So if mouse.delta.readValue.magnitude is bigger than 0, we set our mouse cursor to visible. Mouse.delta.readValue returns a vector 2 of how many pixels our mouse moved in the x and y direction. And with .magnitude, we get the length of this vector. So if the length is bigger than 0, then this means we moved our mouse in this frame. Okay, now let's hide our cursor when using our keyboard or gamepad. Let's start with our keyboard. To check if our keyboard was used, we can simply check if any key of our keyboard was pressed this frame. And if so, we set our mouse visibility to false. Okay, let's see if this already works. At the beginning, I see my mouse cursor. And when pressing any key, we hide our mouse. And when I move the mouse again, it reappears. Nice! Now let's also add our gamepad. And here it gets a bit tricky with this method. Unfortunately, we don't have anything like any key to determine if something was pressed or not. Instead, we would have to check each input separately. So for example, we have to check if our left stick was moved, or our right stick, or if any direction of our D-pad was pressed. This already gets pretty big, and there are still enough buttons I haven't checked. And also, what happens when we unplug our gamepad? It would create an error. Therefore, we have to additionally check if our gamepad is not null before checking any input. And technically, we would also have to check our keyboard and our mouse. In conclusion, this method is fine when using just a mouse and keyboard, or you only want to hide the cursor when pressing specific buttons. But for an overall input check, we could use something else. So while researching for a better solution, I came across a Unity discussion thread that showed a way to listen to any input action by using the onActionChange callback. So let's use that. First, we don't need anything we wrote in our update function, and we can also delete our mouse, keyboard and gamepad variable. Now to use the onActionChange callback, we need to assign a function to listen to it. So let's create a private void onInputActionChange and give it an object and an inputActionChange as a parameter. And let's add this function to the onActionChange callback when our script gets enabled and remove it again when we disable the script. Now, whenever onActionChange is active, our onInputActionChange function gets called and gets an object and an inputActionChange. Back to our function, we first check if an input action change is performed. If so, we convert our object into an input action, then get the active control from our input action, and finally we can get the device that invoked that input change action. And let's test that by printing the device display name in the console. Okay, so when using the mouse, it shows mouse. Using the keyboard shows keyboard. And when using the gamepad, you see what kind of gamepad I'm using. Nice. Back in our code, basically what we need to do now is to check whether our last used device was our mouse or any other device. So if our device was a mouse, we set our cursor visibility to true. If not, meaning we have used anything else, we set it to false. And that's it. Now using our keyboard or gamepad will hide our mouse cursor, and using our mouse will make it visible again. Nice. Hey, I hope you liked this tutorial, and if so, why not leave a thumbs up and maybe subscribe for more tutorials and game dev related content. If you're interested in watching more tutorials, then you can check out my tutorial playlist here. And if you want to see how I survived my first game jam, then you can check it out here. And thank you so much for watching. Until next time, ciao!